Hey you, it's CovertGo2, and I'm going away for a while, back on the road yet again. This one I can tell you about. I'm going to be in the March of the Machine pre-release with the folks at Loading Ready Run, and that will be streaming on this Saturday that's coming up. And I'm also recording some content while I'm there, so you should check out Loading Ready Run on Twitch, and also they have an LRR MTG YouTube channel that you should look up. Just look up Loading Ready Run MTG or LRR MTG, and you can subscribe to that channel where there might be some really cool fun stuff coming from me and some other fun guests in the near future. So yeah, if you ever wondered if I suck at Limited, first of all, you need to know one thing. I haven't lost a game of Limited in over 2 years. Number two, just tune in and find out. It's going to be fine. So I'm going to read a whole bunch of the March of the Machine cards for you because I'm not sure that I'll have time to record a proper set review. And these are all just cards that look cool to me. Also, I've done so much of this and it's so crammed into such a tight window of trying to get these out that there is a chance I read a card multiple times from a different video, or that I skip a card because I think I read it in another video, maybe I didn't. This is not meant to be a comprehensive set review. This is just me catching up and reading the cards and sharing my initial reactions with them to all of you. Hopefully I'll have time when I get back to record like a top 10 show or something like that. You guys love those videos. But in the meantime, let's read some cards. This will be longer than the average video because there won't be any videos posted for the next several days while I'm traveling to Victoria, Canada and back. So enjoy this slightly longer video, or just pause it every 10 minutes, break it up, and then, you know, watch some more of it and fill in the days when I'm missing. And don't worry, there are already videos recorded and sent to the editor to cover the days that I'm gone on the regular gameplay channel, so enjoy that. Mom cards. We're going to read a lot of mom cards, a lot of team ups, a lot of crazy cards. So here's the first team up: Kogla and Yadaro. 2 red, green, 7/7 legendary creature, ape, dinosaur, turtle. That's wonderful. When it enters the battlefield, you choose one. It either gains trample and haste until end of turn, roar, or it fights target creature you don't control, roar. That's a nice optionality right there, either to be very aggressive or somewhat controlling and kill an important threat. But what I love is this last ability. 2 red, green, discard Kogla and Yadaro. Destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. Shuffle Kogla and Yadaro into your library from your graveyard, then draw a card. So 4 mana, destroy target artifact or enchantment, uncounterable, and draw a card? That's pretty good. And you just shuffle this card right back in. I guess technically you discarded a card, right? But so it's not exactly card advantage. But I mean, you did blow up an artifact or enchantment there, so it is card advantage. It's a good card. I think this card is cool. I'm not sure exactly where it plays since in standard, because standard right now is a bit of a mess when it comes to green. But it's definitely a cool commander and historic brawl card. And there will be a lot of those. Inga and Isika is 2 and Simic, for a total of 4 for a 4/4 legendary creature, human god. Look at the cats. Look at Isika's chariot. Look at the Maine Coon kitties. Oh my god. Creatures you control have vigilance, and add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a creature. Very nice. Vigilance and the ability to tap for creature mana. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast it, draw a card. This isn't the only way to make mana with your creatures either. You can tap your Llanowar elves or your other mana dorks, Fabro Elder and such, to get that mana. And the fact that you draw a card whenever you cast a creature that way is just good value. This will be a very popular commander. In standard, I think it isn't quite enough for 4 mana, but it's cool. And there's a Rainbow Bridge and kitties. So yeah, commander. This card is commander. Next up is Errant and Giada. And this is a 1 and a blue and a white. Those are my colors. 2/3 human angel with flash and flying. You may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may cast spells with flash or flying from the top of your library. I have a Chromium the Mutable deck, and this could be a historic brawl deck, but it's mostly a commander deck, and it loves flash creatures and it loves flash payoffs, and this is a sweet flash payoff that lets you cast from the top of your library, which creates card advantage. This card is so cool. Can we also give it up for Agent Carter? We got a total Agent Carter look on the art going on. So this card is very specifically for Historic Brawling Commander as well. In Standard, I think for 3 mana, you don't have enough payoffs in both Flying or Flash, but maybe I'm wrong. You can cast Profane with this. You can cast Ledger Shredder with this. Maybe there's enough to get a flying type of theme going, where if you have this on the board, you're gaining a lot of advantage from it every turn. And if that's true, this card has hope. But I'm much more into this card in Commander. Complete the Circuit. This is 5 and a blue instant rare with Convoke. You may cast sorcery spells this turn as though they had flash, and when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell twice. You may choose new targets for the copy. There are a ton of Convoke cards in this set. Convoke is back in a huge way. There's a lot of very expensive Convoke cards in this set. For the most part, I don't like them, because the primary issue with Convoke, especially in 60 card formats, is that you probably don't get to attack with your creatures when you Convoke. Taking that turn off, giving the opponent that tempo boost, is normally a recipe for disaster in Standard, unless it has a profound battlefield effect, which many of these Convoke cards don't necessarily have. So I'm skeptical of a number of them. This one, the ability is so insane that your next instant or sorcery being cast at instant speed, because it gives flash to your sorcery spells, and copying it twice. Like, if getting all the pieces together is hard, you need 6 mana, or you need like a bunch of creatures to help you Convoke this. Then you need the mana to cast the spell you want to copy. But if the pieces come together, copying a spell twice at instant speed that can be a sorcery, it feels like this is another way to take a million extra turns or deal tons of damage or draw your whole deck. So this one gives me hope that there's some shenanigans that can make this a very dangerous card. Itsugu and Kairi. Kairi. 2 blue black, legendary creature, ogre, demon, dragon, a 5/4 flyer. Okay, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards. Then put 2 from your hand on top in any order, so you brainstorm. Then when this dies, exile the top card of your library. Target opponent loses life equal to its mana value. If it's an instant or sorcery, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Wow. So this card is really cool for both the enter's ability, a very dangerous threat, and you get to draw 3 and put 2 back. When you put the 2 back, you can assume that you would probably want to stack some instants and sorceries. So if the opponent kills this in the next turn cycle or 2, you probably get to cast an instant or sorcery for free, which is nasty, and they lose life equal to its mana value. In a format like Pioneer or Commander, having really expensive delve spells, right, like Dig Through Time, Temporal Trespass, could be really nuts with this card and really vicious. I think that there's other ways, of course, to make your creatures die. You can sack it to Deadly Dispute or Village Rites. If you have a sack outlet on the field, you can sack this when you want to. And you can cast an instant or sorcery without paying its mana cost and make everybody lose life equal to its mana value. Maybe an Alrund's Epiphany or an Emergent Ultimatum. So I can see a lot of potential for this in Historic Brawling Commander formats, which continues to be the thing with these. However, this one could see some standard play. A 5/4 flyer isn't something you can easily ignore. I just don't think it's as good as most of the options out there. But give it up for the Ogre Demon Dragon. What a terrifying combination. Into the Fire is 2 and a red sorcery. It is a rare, and it is a modal sweeper, small time sweeper type spell, which I think is very cool. You can choose to have it do 2 damage to each creature planeswalker in battle, which there are plenty of matchups where that is exactly what you need. But you can also choose to put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library and then draw that many cards +1, cycling and a little plus. A little extra if you have a few more cards you don't need in your hand. This card is just kind of this modal cheap sweeper and best of one that might see play if really aggressive low to the ground decks continue to thrive. Then we've got the Hoarding Broodlord. This is the other Convoke card I really love. 5 black for a dragon. Very expensive. Convoke, flying. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, exile it face down and shuffle. As long as that card remains exiled, you may play it. Spells you cast from exile have Convoke. tutor any card and give it Convoke. What a sick dragon. You can Convoke this, but you can also reanimate this. You can also just straight up cast it if you have a whole bunch of mana. And the fact that you get to fetch something and put it in exile means the opponent can't just take it from your hand with something like a Thoughtseize. Then the ability to Convoke that card could be insanely powerful. This is a really cool tutor effect for, of course, Historic Brawl and Commander, but in Standard, if we have ways to reanimate cards, you might see a really sweet reanimation type chain with this. Also, one of my favorite things in late games for like go big black decks is to cast a card like Hordling Broodlord and fetch another Hordling Broodlord and fetch another Hordling Broodlord and just keep this chain of giant dragons going until they die. Next up, we have Baral and Kari Zev. What a weird combo. The most aggressive of cheap commanders and the most controlling of cheap commanders. This is 1 and is it 3 total. A 2/4 legendary creature human rare. It has first strike. It has menace. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, you may cast a spell with lesser mana value that shares a card type with it from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, you create First Mate Ragavan, a legendary 2/1 monkey pirate creature token. It gains haste until end of turn. It also doesn't die on end step, but it is legendary, so having multiples of them isn't particularly useful. So you can either double spell off one spell. For example, you lightning strike your opponent. You can choose whether or not to cast Play with Fire from your hand for free, or you can make this 2/1 hasty token. This card seems like a potential player. A 2/4 for 3 is not a bad body, a difficult one to interact with. First strike is very annoying to attack into. Menace is very annoying to block. The ability to make the token that has haste is very dangerous. The ability to get free mana out of it by casting cheaper spells is very dangerous. I could see attempting an Is It Burn prowess type deck. I'm not sure if it will be good. It probably won't be because it's very hard to break into Standard right now. But this card, I think, has enough going for it to have Standard potential. And I think it will be a very popular Spellslinger commander for Historic Brawl and for Commander. And I know plenty of people who will play this card in Commander. So I'm excited to see how that goes. I might even be able to get my wife to try a blue deck. That's how popular I think this card will be. Next card is Rankle and Torbrand, a dwarf and a fairy rogue. Yeah, 1 black, red. Let me just throw it out there. And my axe, because that's all I can think of when I look at the art. This is a legendary creature, fairy dwarf, 3/4. Flying, first strike, haste. That's a lot of good abilities. It is 5 mana though. Whenever Rankle and Torbrand deals combat damage to a player or battle, choose any number. Each player creates a treasure token. Each player sacrifices a creature. If a source would deal damage to a player or battle this turn, it deals that much damage +2 instead. If a source would... So this is when it deals damage, right? So if you put that trigger on the stack, the damage you just dealt doesn't get the +2 bonus, but any other spells or... Oh, this does have first strike. So all the damage that comes after it in the combat could potentially have the +2 bonus because this has first strike. It hits first, which is weird to me because Rankle didn't have first strike and Torbrand didn't have first strike. But for the card to work exactly the way they wanted, I guess they had to give it first strike. How good is this card? You get the treasure. So if you can use that mana to also cast things that get a 2-point bonus. The sacrifice a creature thing can remove really troublesome stuff like maybe a Shieldred. This card is expensive. 5 is so much to ask, but it does have evasion. It will probably hit, and it can help deal a lot of damage. It's good in a go wide strategy for sure. Yeah, go wide strategy. You need to be playing a good number of creatures, I think, for this to be as sweet of a card and really live up to its own potential. But this card is good, and it might see Standard play if you can do a go wide Rakdos type of build. Of course, these team-ups are going to be good in Commander. I don't really like Rankle's play pattern, though, in Commander, because oftentimes people's Commander, if it's just their only creature ends up getting sacrificed, you make yourself the enemy really quickly. And while that's very powerful, you will realize that becoming the enemy just for playing your commander is a real problem in the format, Commander, because people will kill you just for playing your game. And that does take a lot of what makes the format great out of the format. So you got to be careful with things like this. I'm interested to see how this will play out in formats like Commander. In Historic Brawl, I bet I can build a sick Historic Brawl aggro deck around it. Although 5 mana is a lot. Suruk and Goreclaw is 4 green, a mono green team up. Legendary creature Human Bear. 6/5 trample. Other creatures you control have trample. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it and it gains haste. All your stuff gets haste and is bigger and has trample. That's a lot of abilities, but 6 mana is a lot for that effect, and I'm guessing this is much more of a commander card than anything else. Urtai Primal Conqueror is 7 total mana, 5 red for a 7/7 Elder Dinosaur with trample. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent does the Urtai thing, if you remember that. Each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. Actually, that's even better than the Urtai thing, because Urtai could just whiff and hit land. You may cast any number of spells from among non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. So in 1v1, this enters the battlefield, you get a spell from their deck and your deck, and you can cast those 2 for free. In Commander, it's 4. Wow. So then you can transform it for 9 and a Phyrexian green into a Blightsteel Colossus. Like, basically, other than the colorless part, literally. A trample indestructible 11/11 that when it does combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters. So just straight up one-shotting people with a tally, the primal sickness. This card is cool, and it might be a reanimation target worthy, but it's like, you compare it to Atraxa, right? Atraxa gets a whole bunch of cards in hand. Tally casts 2 spells right away. There are times when that is better. Sometimes you need more board impact than just the 7/7. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see some amount of reanimating this crazy dinosaur in Standard. However, I think it's really meant to be a commander card. That is where the card truly shines. Palucronose Reborn is a green for a 4/5 reach, which is a very decent rate if you can afford the triple green cost. Maybe our mana, like we're casting Invoke Despair in 3-color decks, maybe we can get green. Anyway, the 4/5 reach part is just part of the equation. When we pay 6 and a Phyrexian white, we get a 6/6 reach lifelink. And when Palucronose, Engine of Ruin, or another non-token Hydra you control dies, create a 3/3 white Phyrexian Hydra creature token with reach and a 3/3 green white Vyrexian Hydra creature token with lifelink. It does the Worm Coil engine thing where it splits into 2, 1 lifelinker and 1 reacher. Obviously, you'd rather have the Death Touch. We don't have the Death Touch from the Worm Coil engine, and that is a bummer. This card is all right, though, and it's interesting for like a green-white commander that barely splashes some white. I think that this card might even see some standard play if we get enough good green cards, or we can pair it. Like, I honestly think you might be playing it in like a Naya deck where all your lands produce green, and you want that, like, you can cast off Plaza of Harmony. We know that legendary creatures get sweet lands, but does it really take the spot from things like Squee, Adeline, other things in this spot? I'm not positive, but this card has some potential to me. Borborygmos and Thipplethib. So 6/5, 2 green, blue, red, or Teamer, 5 total mana. This is a Cyclops Homunculus. Hashtag gang one eye, I guess. Whenever Borborygmos and Thipplethib enter the battlefield or attack, draw a card, and then you may discard any number of land cards. When you discard 1 or more cards this way, it deals twice that much damage to target creature, and then 1 in a blue puts this into its owner's library 1/3 from the top. So that first line, whether this is entering the battlefield or attacking you or drawing cards, that is already really good. The discard a land is a May effect, but it is any number, so it does staple some kind of a removal option, right, to this card that already was pretty good, drawing cards every time it got to hang around. If Elder Gargaroth was playable, this seems like a bit more value than Elder Gargaroth, and I think this might be a very playable card. The color combination isn't great. Not a lot of people lining up to play Teamer right now, but I think that this is a potential, this is a potential build around, and also a very good commander. Boonbringer Valkyrie is the new Baneslayer. It's 3 and a white 4/4 Angel Warrior rare as backup 1 when it enters the battlefield. You put a counter on target creature, a +1/+1 counter. And if it's a different creature, not this, it gains the abilities until end of turn. So it would gain Flying, First Strike, and Lifelink until end of turn. In a lot of ways, this is better than a Baneslayer Angel. Baneslayer has the problem that it comes down, it stabilizes the battlefield, but if it dies, you kind of wasted your mana. So the dies to removal argument takes off. Boonbringer Valkyrie, if the opponent doesn't have that removal open and available in that moment, and you drop this and you put its +1/+1 counter on another creature and give it those abilities, then you get a lot of the swing of the Baneslayer Angel, and you still have the 4/4 Flying, First Strike, Lifelink left over. Imagine putting your counter on a Steel Seraph and giving it all these sweet abilities, then also giving it Vigilance. That's a huge swing in any kind of race. This card will be very hard to race in general, and it provides another sweet angelic warrior to the decks that are really looking at that particular creature type. Next, we have the Invasion of Almond Cat. This is a battle siege for 1 and a blue and a black. When it enters the battlefield, each player mills 3 cards, then each opponent discards a card and you draw a card. That's a lot of effect for 3 mana on a 4 defense battle. It reminds me of Disinformation Campaign, but that didn't have the mill effect, and that mill effect can do a lot in certain matchups. I mean, you're milling yourself and the opponent, so whether you want to mill either way, this card is playable. And then when you transform it, you get a Lazotep Convert, which is a 4/4 zombie. And when you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature, except it's a 4/4 black zombie in addition to its other types. I think this card is pretty cool. It's definitely a commander card, and I want to see how it plays, but I like the amount of value on the front side. It gets me more excited about this battle than many others. We're going to add a Marshal of Zhalfir. This is a pretty straightforward one, just to let you know that knights are going to be a supported type. It's a blue and a white for a 2/2 human knight that gives other knights +1/+1, and it has a sweet ability that for a blue and a white, you can tap another target creature by tapping this. Now, knights are known for their vigilance, so if you find a way to give vigilance to all of your critters, you can attack and still tap a blocker and get in for damage. I think this is a really sweet Anthem style effect for the creature type knight. Next, we have Invasion of Regatha, 2 and a red for a battle siege. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to another target battle or opponent, and 1 damage to up to 1 target creature. So what I love about this is the 4 burn to face and the maybe 1 damage to another creature. 5 damage spread out for 4 mana, but able to send 4 of it face is pretty good, and I think burn decks are going to want to try it, but it might get hurt in the Spellslinger type archetypes because it is a battle. It's not an instant. Not a sorcery. There are plenty of decks that really care about that, but we'll see if this makes the cut strictly based on the front side, which is a really strong damage output. And then on the back side, if you actually do manage to transform it, you get Disciples of the Inferno, which is a 4/4 prowess, and if a non-creature source would deal damage to a creature, battle, or opponent, it deals that much +2 instead. A serious amplifier, a little bit of mechanized warfare plus a little bit of Torbrand on the back of this thing. It could be worth it. I'm going to keep my eye on this one. The Azaleth. Azaleth. One of the more beloved cards that came out of Ikoria too. Azaleth, the Shattered Spire, is 1 and a green for a legendary artifact rare. It says if 1 or more +1/+1 counters will be put on an artifact or creature you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on instead. So it's another kind of hardened scales +1 counter amplifier. Then it has another ability for 1 and a green to put a +1/+1 counter on target artifact or creature you control, which you activate as a sorcery. That's really cool. because it's basically putting 2 on it because you have the Azaleth. It's kind of neat that it both powers up the archetype and provides a way to provide +1/+1 counters, because it removes some of that uncertainty of you need the thing to put the counters on, you need the amplifier, and you need the thing that does the counters. This handles 2 of those jobs. What it isn't is the Azaleth. The Azaleth was sweet because if all those counters wound up on your battlefield and your battlefield got destroyed, you got to save counters on the Azaleth and then put them back on something else. A very sweet card. This isn't quite that, but it still has a home in any commander deck that wants to lean into the synergy, and might have a home somewhere in standard if the synergy is pushed far enough. Oh, by the way, it cycles. You can discard it to draw a card, which is very good for a legendary artifact. If it didn't have that, you'd be afraid of running 3 or 4 copies in a deck that used +1/+1 counters. Now you don't have to fear it. Bloated Processor is 2 and a black for a rare 3/2 Vyrexian that says sacrifice another Vyrexian, put a +1/+1 counter on Bloated Processor, and when the Bloated Processor dies, incubate X where X is its power. I'm mostly worried about that sacrifice another Vyrexian thing. Free sack outlets are dangerous. Now, sacrifice another creature would be much more dangerous, but maybe the Vyrexian creature type gets pushed far enough that you build an all Vyrexian deck where sacrificing them lets you go into some rather nonsensy combos. So keep an eye on this card. It seems like a dangerous card, depending on how much the Vyrexian types are pushed. The next card is Invasion of Pharaohs. 2 and a white for a battle siege with 4 defense. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for an aura, god, or demigod card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. First of all, on the front, we get a tutor effect, and those are sweet in commander type formats, singleton hundo card formats. So there's already, just from that existing, a lot of decks that I would want to play this in. Auras it used to be a really narrow type. Now it's actually a really good type, especially in Historic Brawl, because you can search your library for your Witness Protection, or your Planar Disruption, or your Heliod's Punishment, the aura that's going to shut down the opponent's commander. Or you can search for an aura that you do want to throw on your own creature for some kind of synergy with your deck, maybe a curiosity type effect to go on your evasive creature. Then you can also fetch gods. Maybe that'll be a thing. I'm not sure. Maybe you just want to fetch up Heliod or Daxos to go with Heliod. I don't know. Anyway, let's look at the backside. Ifara, the Ever Sheltering, is a 4/4, and this has lifelink and indestructible as long as you control at least 3 other enchantments. Whenever another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. That's a really cool enchantress type effect, and this getting lifelink and indestructible is very, very good. Okay. Question. The front side is just white. The back side doesn't have any blue mana symbols on it, but it is a blue-white card. What is the color identity of this card? Does it go in a mono-white Historic Brawl deck, or do you have to be playing blue even though the backside has no blue mana symbols? Let me know in the comments. I am sus. I'm really not sure. Next up is Rona, Herald of Invasion. I like this card a lot. 1 and a blue for a 1/3 legendary human wizard. Whenever you cast a legendary spell, untap Rona, tap to draw a card, then discard a card. And then for 5 and Phyrexian black, you transform this at sorcery speed, and it's a 5/5 trample. Whenever a source deals damage to Rona, that source's controller exiles a card from their hand at random. If it's a land card, you put on the battlefield. Otherwise, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. At last, I am complete. This card is sweet. I love the way that it's using RNG, but from the source's controller's hand. That can be your hand if you damage Rona yourself, or it can be the opponent's. So they're going to try very hard to avoid damaging this, but avoiding damaging a 5/5 creature with trample, a little bit of a Phyrexian obliterator, we know how that goes. I really do like the front side though, especially in all the Legends Matters Esper type decks where you're casting plenty of legendary spells. You can get a lot of these tap to discard and draw a card triggers and still have Rona around to block or attack. So I love this in Rafine type shell, and I want to give it a try there to see just how much play it really gets. Sunfall. Actually, I have this on here twice. I'm just going to delete the other one really quick. All right, Sunfall is a new board wipe. 3 white sorcery rare. Exile all creatures. Exile. big deal. Incubate X, where X is the number of creatures exiled this way. I think this might be worth playing. Obviously, 4-mana wraths like Depopulate happen at a crucial point on the curve when you are about to die to tons of creatures. But board wipes haven't quite been what they used to be, and there's plenty of indestructible and other shenanigans going around. This not only exiles all creatures, but it also incubates. And so if you exile like 3 creatures, you have a little artifact sitting there with 3+1/+1 counters. And when you put 2 mana into it later, you have a creature. Now, as a really sweaty control mage who looks at everything like maybe I can have this defensive card that does this role, but it's also my win con, I look at Sunfall as a win con because I want to blow up all their stuff and then transform like a 4/4 or a 5/5 creature and beat them to death with it and protect it with a counterspell or 2. That honestly isn't far-fetched in best of 1, where a lot of decks just have no way to deal with larger creatures. And of course, plenty of decks will have answers and defending it might be difficult, but if you run 4 Sunfalls, you can probably find a way. So yeah, now my board wipe is also a win con. I am truly unstoppable. Jiro and Hazard are 2 and a red and a white for a 5/4 human god rare. As long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, this has vigilance and haste. That is a callback to the god text of Hazard, which led to some serious feel bads if you want to see the worst like misplay in Pro Tour history. You know, you can look up a video on that. But instead of it having to have 1 or fewer cards in hand to attack, it gains abilities now from having 1 or fewer cards in hand. Vigilance and haste. This can attack no matter how many cards you have in your hand. I think that's an important thing to know. An important thing to know. Whenever Jiro and Hazard attacks, you look at the top 6 of your library. You may exile a legendary creature card from among them, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Until end of turn, you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Like, this should have been like Hazard and Winota. You get to look at your top 6, exile the coolest legendary creature card, and we know there's a lot of Oops All Legends kind of decks already available. You get your Sheoldred, get your Rafine, get your Ao, the Dawnsky, get whatever. And then you get to cast it for free. Get all your other team-ups. All the other team-ups are legendary. This card seems sweet. As a commander, it limits you in the color pie to red and white. And that takes a lot of the steam out of the card, I think. But there's still plenty of really, really good red and white legendary cards like Aurelia with War Leader and Archangel Avacyn. There's a lot of really expensive ones too, like Avacyn Angel of Hope, and probably other things I'm not quite thinking of. Oh, Gazella, I think, is a damage doubler. Casting those for free when this attacks could be absolutely gross and disgusting. The issue is getting down to 1 or fewer cards in hand, because if you have a deck full of those cards, they're expensive and they're hard to get out of your hand. So this will be an interesting deck building puzzle for Commander and Historic Brawl, one that I will enjoy diving into. Kroxa and Kunaros is 3 and Mardu, 6 total mana. You get a 6/6 Elder Giant Dog. Can I just say how ridiculous it is to have Kroxa and Kunaros teaming up? Kunaros is the dog that doesn't let cards enter the battlefield from graveyards. It was like a hate piece against Kroxa, and now they're coming together. Also, Kroxa, you're looking a little hungry. You have a giant hole in your stomach, dude. What's going on? Anyhow, Elder Giant Dog is a really cool line of text. Vigilance, Menace, Lifelink. Wow, those are good abilities on a 6/6. Whenever this enters the battlefield or attacks, you may exile 5 cards from your graveyard. When you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. All right, so a little bit of escape action. You let anything escape. So also a reanimator effect, and it's when it enters the battlefield or attacks. So you want to use cards that fill your graveyard a lot. Then you want to either cast or reanimate this or flicker it and get back all kinds of things. Ooh, it sounds absolutely disgusting to see all the different things you can reanimate with this sucker. So yeah, this card looks really sweet, probably too expensive for standard, but very, very cool for singleton commander type formats. Invasion of Govicon. Invasion of Govicon. This is 1 and a white for a battle siege, and when it enters the battlefield, oh yeah, it has 3 defense. Look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. As long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. That spell costs 2 more to cast. So it's the Elite Spellbinder, the Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa card. It's that ability without the 3/1 flying body, but it's only 2 mana and it's on a battle with a very low defense count that can be transformed pretty easily. And then what do you get? You get Light Shield Array. Look at all these folks being like, no, you can't touch us. An enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that attacked this turn. Sacrifice Light Shield Array. Creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So this is pretty cool. The beginning of end step +1/+1 counter thing is very notable as the army keeps growing. And the ability to sacrifice this to protect your board is very cool too. This is a sweet card. It does take 2 mana that you're doing instead of casting your creatures, which can kind of hamper development. But I can see this getting played in a lot of mono white taxes and mid-range decks, just because you do get not a Thoughtseize effect, that would be 1 mana, but a 2 mana basically discard and tax effect. You get knowledge of your opponent's hand, you pave the way for your cards to resolve, you take out pesky removal spells and you make them cost a lot more. This taxing effect is very popular. I think this card will be very popular while people try it out. I'm not sure if it will make the cut when all is said and done across all the formats, but it might see a good amount of historic brawl play. I don't know. It seems to fit an important role in that format where the white decks need ways to interact with counter spells so they don't just get countered out of the game. This, for example, in an Elish Norn Mother of Machines type deck, is almost an absolute must-have, because what always happens is they have a million ways to interact with your commander and not let you do the cool things. We're getting there, guys. I've got 3 more cards for you. Thank you for hanging out. This is your secret shout out to everybody still watching this. Thank you for staying this long in the video. It helps a lot. Let me know in the comments, of course, that you're here, and let me know what your favorite card coming up from this set is. Also, let me know what I missed. You guys always do. You'll tell me exactly how I didn't read a card right. You know, thanks. I do need to be checked sometimes. I get it. It's fine. The Invasion of New Kapena is a white and a black with 4 defense battle. When it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice an artifact or creature. When you do, exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls. It's like Rite of Oblivion, right? So Rite of Oblivion does a similar effect. You just need some sacrificial artifacts and creatures. The historic and historic brawl formats are full of them. Standard doesn't have a lot of that going on, but you can sacrifice like a wedding announcement token or something like that. Anyway, transforming this, you get a Holy Frazzle Cannon. Seems really silly to me, but it's an artifact equipment and it has equip 1. And whenever equipped creature attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature and each other creature you control that shares a type with it. So that's a really good creature type synergy equipment for sure, as it can buff up the whole team. And it says they're using my Halo stockpile for what? We're putting it in a cannon, Jetmir. We're putting it in a cannon and we're shooting it at the Phyrexians, and that's the way it's gonna be. Vyrexian Sensor is 2 and a white for a 3/3 Phyrexian wizard, uncommon. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-Phyrexian spell each turn. Non-Phyrexian creatures enter the battlefield tapped. What a nasty little card. White has leaned very far into just being annoying as possible, and this is a very annoying card to deal with. Yeah, it's probably more of a sideboard card, and it definitely is a good, dangerous, really, commander card, even reaching into like CEDH, as it's a rule of law type effect, keeping Storm players from comboing off. And also, creatures entering the battlefield tapped is really a lot more disruptive than it always looks. It's a very big problem, and if you're being aggressive and the opponent is trying to defend themselves, they can't block, like ever. It puts a lot of pressure on them. So I think this card is going to see play, and I think it's going to be very annoying. I think it could be in all of the formats, like all of them. And then my last card here on my list is Zimone and Dina. And this is Soultie, 3 mana, a 3/4 human dryad. And whenever you draw your second card each turn, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. A little Sheldred pop there. And it taps to sacrifice another creature, draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. That's really good. If you have 8 or more lands, repeat this process once. That's really good too. So you get a lot of value. You get a sacrifice engine in the command zone, which is a notably very good thing. And I don't know if it's going to see play in standard because it just doesn't seem like for 3 mana that is good enough. But I do think it will be a very popular commander type card as people try to make it work. Drawing cards is fun. Making opponents lose life while you gain life is fun. Putting like some land ramp into it, getting all that stuff together is very, very fun. And sacrificing cards, who knew, was also fun. So yeah, fun. We'll see this in many places. It'll be a very popular mythic. A lot of people are going to build this commander and this Historic Brawl deck. All right. We're about 40 minutes into this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Like I said, going to be gone for a while, but I hope you enjoyed reading these cards and going over some of the awesome stuff coming in March of Machine. I can't wait to play these cards and build decks for all of you with them. Thank you for watching this video. As always, I will see you in the next one. You stayed till the end. You're cool.